Can you hear me? Am I not, am I
No,
muted?
no, I can hear you perfectly.
Okay, good morning, everybody. I'm Tony Lachman. Who am I? I'm a freelance cardiologist. I'm an African American. I am an ice cream entrepreneur and a preventative cardiologist. A little bit of everything so that we can make this entertaining. You can listen to some, you can close out others. I'm going to talk about some facts and some myths, and we'll end up with some heart healthy tips for heart disease. The cardiologist part of me. I trained in South Africa. I was born in Johannesburg. I went to University of Witwatersrand after being at King David School and volunteering for the Army Gymnasium. That's another story. During my training, I was asked to go to Baragwanath Hospital, the largest hospital, as you know, in the Southern Hemisphere, as a registrar before finishing my training to run the cardiology department at Baragwanath. It was a mammoth task. We had a new surgeon, and I was there for 2 years when I was asked or instructed by Professor Barlow. This is the hospital, as you know, Baragwanath is a very, very busy hospital serving Soweto and the surroundings. I was asked to go to the United States to the National Institute of Health in Bethesda, Maryland, to study cardiac pathology. And on June 16, 1976, I arrived in New York, having gone through Rio de Janeiro. Fortunately for me, I would have been in the middle of Soweto on the day of the Soweto uprising. So something was telling me that I had to be there. And that's where I become an African American. I always chided my Black and African American colleagues and nurses and people I met there that I am a true African American. I was born in Africa and I'm now an American citizen as well. And there I worked at the university, at the NIH for a year, and then went to Connecticut, where after a couple of years in academic practice, I started my own practice, built this building, had 3 partners, and then became 6. But after, and when I was there, I also became an ice cream entrepreneur. I had a holiday house on an island off the coast of Maine. And as you can see, we sold Annabelle's and Hershey's ice cream with my then 17-year-old son, and we worked that over the holiday periods, vacation periods in the summer for 7 years. Everybody would say, how can a cardiologist have an ice cream store? And it's quite easy, as I said. There's no conflict of interest because I didn't have a license to practice in the state of Maine. And number 2, it's not the ice cream stupid, it's how much you eat. And most Americans, if you know what a single scoop of ice cream is, it's what a tub of ice cream would be here. So we ran that for a while. After 29 and a half years, the calling came to come back to South Africa, and I'm a part of what Professor Harry Seftel used to say, the brain gain. And I came back to South Africa, and I landed up at Chapong Hospital in Klerksdorp. I brought my American partner, life partner at this stage, and now she's my wife, Nancy, there. And she said, what the hell did you bring me to the middle of Idaho or Nebraska to be in Klerksdorp in the middle of nowhere? We were there for 3.5 years. I was the only cardiologist for 3.5 to 4 million people in the Northwest province. Had a marvelous time, a wonderful Jewish community there. There were 29 families. When I was there, at one stage, there were 35 doctors who were all Jewish in Klerksdorp. It's now dwindled down to about 13 families, but they really encompassed us, and we had a wonderful time in the Jewish life. But then we found out there was a road going south, and we took that road going south, and I was headhunted to come to Groote Hospital, where after a year, I landed up leaving Groote because my mission was, how do I serve the public in South Africa? And I realized that there are only 160 cardiologists in the whole country, whereas the Mayo Clinic has over 330 cardiologists, and of which 35 of them are ex-South Africans. So we have a very tremendous shortage of specialists, and I decided I would go out And I now worked at Victoria Hospital, Somerset Hospital, Groote Maternity High-Risk Clinic, the military hospital, and at False Bay Hospital. So I go do sessions, and my whole mission is how do I train non-cardiologists to do what is important for cardiology, because otherwise people who do not have good medical aids do not get access to specialists. I'm going to divert from there and then come on to another part of the talk, the cardiology. The next 4 pictures are people who are important in the cardiology world for different reasons. This one gives it away. He's Ancel Keys. He's one of the people who in the early 1960s, 1970s came out with diet and health and put us on the wrong path. Do you know who this next person is? Anybody hazard a guess? If you look at the type of diet that this person is doing, this person here is Atkins. Atkins was the one who started the high protein, high fat diet to decrease heart disease. And the next person, I'm sure you all know who this is. I can see Philip nodding his head. It's Trevor Noakes, who then turned the whole medical fraternity on their head by coming up, not Trevor, Tim Noakes, Nancy corrected me, who turned the whole medical community up in arms because he debunked what everybody was thinking about heart disease and cholesterol and fat. And he based this on this individual. This individual, anybody hazard a guess? This is Banting, William Banting. In the 1890s, William Banting came up with the Banting diet. As you can see, he didn't necessarily follow that diet because he is a portly individual who eventually died of heart disease. So whatever his diet was, you've got to take it with a grain of salt. Cardiovascular disease affects, something like, I need to go back, 65 million Americans. Close to 1 million Americans have a heart attack each year, and it is the leading cause of death. You know, we're all afraid of cancer. We're all afraid of everything else, but cardiovascular death is the highest cause of death in the United States and in the Western world and in the privileged population of our country. The other thing is 1 in 3 Americans have metabolic syndrome. This is a syndrome which has risk factors for cardiovascular disease with overweight, obesity, and insulin resistance. And the total cost of cardiovascular disease, you can see, is over $300 billion. And this was in 2008, so you can imagine what it is today. Just to give you an idea of what is coronary artery disease, this is a normal coronary artery. We all have, it's part of our plumbing system. And if you look at the coronary artery, look at other arteries, you'll see this is normal. And this is what happens when we get lipid deposit, cholesterol plaque, atherosclerosis. This is coronary artery disease. I show this because we're going to talk a little bit about this in the next few slides. The reason that coronary artery disease and cardiovascular disease is so prevalent in the United States is by this slide, which shows you what we would say, this is a normal sandwich, club snack. This is a medium, and this is a super. So what you and I would have is a slice or 2 of whatever our cold cut is, brisket or whatever it is. The Americans don't believe in that. They believe in supersizing. And by supersizing, they're supersizing their death rate. However, what does this have in relation to what I spoke about earlier with Ancel Keys and Banting and Trevor and Tim Noakes with cholesterol? Only 50% of people who have a heart attack have high cholesterol levels. And 50% of people with high cholesterol levels do not have heart disease. So what is it that is so different? In 1948, the National Heart Lung Blood Institute instituted the Framingham study, which I'm sure some of you have heard it. And the object was to identify the common factors that contribute to cardiovascular disease. and following it over a long period of time. And they followed it every 5 years, and they're still following up now. So this is now going over almost 75 years that they're following up why people have it and why other people don't get it. And as you probably know, I normally show a slide of a pair of Levi jeans, and everybody says, why are you showing Levi jeans? Well, the reason why I'm showing Levi jeans is it's what our genes show, which is one of the major determinants of whether we're going to get heart disease or not. The other things is as increasing age, the male population, obesity and diabetes, smoking, hypertension, and inactive lifestyle. These are all things that we have to be aware of if we want to prevent heart disease. Some of the myths regarding cholesterol, eating cholesterol, and what it does. Eating cholesterol and saturated blood fats raise the cholesterol level in the blood. This is not necessarily true. High cholesterol in the blood is the cause of heart disease. Again, the problem with cholesterol, and this is to debunk a myth, is that one of the things that the investigators in the Framingham study identified was 10 risk factors, and one of them was cholesterol. Now, if you want to think about big pharma and what the pharmaceutical firms want to do, is they only interested in paying high dividends and compensating their CEOs. So they picked up on this and they said, aha, you said cholesterol, we have a magic bullet. And that their magic bullets were statins, whether it's atorvastatin, lovastatin, whichever one you want to think of, all the different statins, and they say they save lives in healthy people without heart disease. That, unfortunately, is not true. If you follow what dietary cholesterol does in animals and in people, it raises the cholesterol level in chickens and rabbits, but many controlled experiments have shown that it has a limited effect on humans. So depending, again, if you go back to those risk factors that I showed earlier, obesity, diabetes, smoking, high blood pressure, it's a sedentary lifestyle, and most important, which genes you wear, whether it's Levi or diesel, but the genes that you've inherited from your parents are going to determine whether you're going to get heart disease more than anything else. I've always said if Grandpa had his heart attack in his late 60s and 70s, Papa is going to have it in his early 50s, and the next generation is going to have it in their 30s and 40s. This is something, their first heart attack. This is something we've seen. So it's something to consider. The lipid hypothesis, which proposed that cholesterol is responsible for buildup in the plaque, is not necessarily true. So eating cholesterol and saturated fat does not necessarily raise cholesterol levels. High cholesterol does not necessarily cause a heart disease unless you have other factors that do it. And statins do not save lives. All they do is make pharmaceutical companies richer. But they do play an important part if you have the other risk factors. Diabetics who have a family history, who are smokers, definitely be on statins. I started off giving everybody statins early on in my career, but I've then had to be very, very circumspect as to who gets it and do they really need it, and do I need to increase the share price of Pfizer and other pharmaceutical companies. So we've looked at that. The low-fat, high-carbohydrate diet. That was what Ansel Keys brought out in that first slide of the people that I showed. And what actually happened is it worked in reverse, because despite going on a low-fat, high-carbohydrate diet, and this is what Tim Noakes picked on, he's not completely correct with all his scientific data, but he really picked up on this, is that what it did is, because they had a low-fat, high-carbohydrate diet, in order to make normal yogurt, full-fat yogurt, taste good, if you make it low-fat yogurt, you have to put other junk into it. You have to put artificial and you have to put sweeteners in it. And what had happened is that it increased the epidemic of obesity, lipid abnormality, type 2 diabetes, metabolic syndrome, and you can no longer defend the low-fat diet. So when you go shopping and you pick things off the shelf, read labels. If it is low fat, ask yourself, why does it taste good? And you'll see in the ingredients are things that you don't want to go anywhere near. Because what we've done is, if you look at the ages of man, when we started off from Raymond Dart and Philip Tobias, looking at early man and how we've changed in our morphology, our thinking hasn't changed, because if you watch how our baboons work here, they're probably smarter than us in many ways. But we've gone for this to this over here: obesity, metabolic syndrome, supersizing. Everybody gets the supersize. I mean, one of the first things I noted when I went to the United States is I took my children to the Washington Zoo. While everybody was taking pictures of animals, I was taking pictures of people, because they had double-sized popcorn, they had these enormous Cokes, these enormous sandwiches, etc. And I found that more interesting than anything else. I'd never in my life seen as much obesity as I saw there. So let's go on to what can we do about the heart disease and how we're going to attach it. I am on the executive of the Heart Failure Society of South Africa, and our mission is to educate doctors and patients about heart disease and heart failure. And one of the things we did this year is we started off Nutrition for a Healthy Heart, taking care of your heart this winter. And I think I'll spend a little time on this, and then we'll leave some time for questioning and any other interaction that you may want. You can all get these publications. There's a whole lot of patient-orientated on healthy heart and heart failure. If one goes to the website, www.HFSA, Heart Failure Society of South Africa.org. And what we did is we commissioned a nutritionist who'd worked in Soweto with the Soweto Heart Study, Sandra Pretorius, to come up with quarterly editions of how to take care of your heart in different times of the year. So Nutrition for a Healthy Heart is, as the weather gets colder, staying healthy is very important. As Philip said, we got cold, harsh weather. We're going to be indoors. With lockdown, many of us haven't gone out, haven't exercised. And what happens is that we pick up weight because we do not eat healthily, and cold and flu viruses linger. We get a change in our lifestyle, and then there's a temptation to have comfort foods. But the comfort food does not mean unhealthy food. So in this last edition, which I encourage you to go to if you have the ability to do it, or I can help you with this, we look at how to stay healthy in the winter and from buying seasonal vegetables. And what we did with this program is, because Sandra had worked with Professor Karen Sleewer in the Soweto Heart Study, is we said, do you have to be super rich and privileged to eat good food? You do not need to do that if you shop wisely. And you can help to prepare foods. You can choose healthy foods, which will keep your immune system strong, and you can have tasty, nutritious, heart-healthy meals. So not only do they keep us warm, they keep us healthy. So one should, number one, eat fruits and vegetables in season. One of the things that really floored me at the United States is you can get fresh peaches at any time of the year. What I really like about being back in South Africa, and there are many, many, many reasons why I believe, in fact, last night, midnight session with Jacob Zuma going to jail shows us that despite what we say and despite our criticism of the country, this country does work. Donald Trump is still at large, as are so many people who should be in jail in other countries. This country is working. We just have to be patient. We're only 27 years into this wonderful new democracy. And if you ask my wife, Nancy Krish, she'd rather be living here than in the United States. So the best ways to do it is to eat fruits and vegetables. Soups and stews are excellent way to incorporate these winter vegetables in heart-healthy meals. So we have recipes on this website, which you can go to, and you're inspired to use different vegetables, legumes, pulses, and different types of food to supplement the protein that if you don't want to eat too much meat. How do you eat the right balance of fat? So we recommend that fat is important. Not only are they important as part of the diet because they have omega-3, DHA, and EPA to promote eye, brain, and heart health, but healthy fats are essential for the function of the immune system. And they also help one absorb vitamins. Now, I don't know if I'm becoming an American. I don't know how many of you take vitamins every day. Again, I quoted Harry Seftel in the beginning, the radio doctor. Harry was my mentor, and I still use a lot of aphorisms. And he says the only thing by taking vitamin pills is you enrich the sewage and the water supply of Cape Town, because most of the vitamins that you take are excreted in the urine. If you eat a healthy diet, if you eat fruits and vegetables in season, you get more than enough. And in South Africa, certainly some people need to take vitamin D, but many of us don't need to take it. If you take a walk on the promenade or you go out in the sun for an hour or two, a couple of days in the week, you get enough vitamin D. I remember I came back to South Africa in 2005 to take care of my elderly father and to come back to the country. And he used to sit outside for half an hour a day to absorb his vitamin D. A handful of nuts, 30 grams every day. You can add them to salads, yogurt, anything stir fries. They have good source of monounsaturated fats and omega-3. So one doesn't need to go and get those tablets. They really, I believe one wastes a tremendous of money on vitamins unless you're shown to be vitamin deficient. And there are some vitamin deficient individuals, vitamin B12, and depending on if one drinks alcohol, vitamin B1 and B6, but you get most of it out of your diet. Eat more fish. Again, sustained fishing, you can get very good fish, and if you do this 2 to 3 times a week, you get your omega-3. And healthy oils, salad dressings, stir frying, olive oil, peanut oil, canola oil, avocado oil, sesame oil. These are all available and do not have to be overly expensive. Limit junk food and unhealthy takeaways. I mean, it's so easy. And I think one of the things we're encouraged now in lockdown is to help sustain the restaurant business by ordering foods at home. But remember, if you can make it, or if you can get whoever's making your food wherever you are staying, whether you're in Highlands House or Cape Care or any place like that, try and encourage them to limit visible fat, cut down on junk food, and cook healthily. Processed meats. Avoid processed meats. Swap the meats, such as salami and things like that, and things. Look at what's in them, nitrates, etc. And you can use chickpeas, grilled meats, eggs, and eggs are not taboo. Canned tuna or salmon. Eat more legumes, beans, lentils, and chickpeas. And as I said earlier, read food labels. It's very, very important to do it. And what we've done is I've given you a couple of recipes here using microgreens, which is the new in thing. I mean, you can, if you have a flat or a house, and you can easily grow your own microgreens just from lentils and seeds, and you get wonderful nutrients in these microgreens. You don't have to go out and buy them. It's easy to grow them. This is one of the salads that I find is one of my favorites, is this this winter salad with citrus salad and avocado, beautiful colors, seasonal greens, blood oranges or ordinary oranges, nachos, which are in season. I mean, I bought a bag of nachos for 50 Rand, and there must have been 55 nachos in them. Where do you get a nachi for less than R1? I mean, but they're in season. So if you buy in season and you chase different things like this, you can have wonderful, healthy meals and stay heart healthy. Pasta with veggies and pea shoots. Quite easy. These recipes are available if you're interested in them, and we can share them because we will be coming out with more of these in further editions of Eating for a Healthy Heart. So the most important things, make most of your meals with vegetables and fruits. and aim for color and variety. I believe one of the good things about lockdown is Nancy and I were going out to restaurants 2 or 3 times a week because Cape Town and the Winelands have such wonderful restaurants. Since we have lockdown, we order our food in, and there are many, many places where you can get very good food, buy fresh, Grenadilles, Babylon's Turin, the farms. A lot of places are supplying good quality food, fresh, that lasts along. And we've been making most wonderful meals, because my adage is tonight's supper may be the last supper that I eat, and it better be a good one. So, that's the way my philosophy in life. My philosophy in life is yesterday is history. Tomorrow is a promise that I may not see, is only today, and I'm better live it as best as I can, as wholesome as I can, and trying to do as much good as I can in society. So in your meals, go for whole grains, whole wheat, barley, berries, quinoa, oats, and brown rice. Proteins are very easy: fish, poultry, beans, and nuts, very good proteins. Limit the red meat. Plant oils, as we mentioned. Skip sugary drinks. Milk and dairy products, should limit that. I believe that, and this is I learned from my late father, that cow's milk is for baby cows. Humans were not made to drink cow's milk. And so we would limit the amount of milk that we have. I mean, industry will try and push it. I mean, in America, the dairy industry pushed to drink at least 1 glass to 2 glasses of milk a day. It's just part of capitalism. Stay active. The most important thing is for weight control, for healthy bones and healthy heart, walk. I don't believe in running. I believe running is only if somebody's chasing you. I believe in walking for 20 to 30 minutes, at least 4 to 5 days in a week, is important for heart health and for general health. And reduce the intake of dietary sodium. Most of you look at the labels of a lot of the food that we eat, and I found that this was very interesting. I had a number of patients. I did something weird. I do many things that are weird. Ice cream entrepreneur. As a cardiologist, I used to do home visits to some of my elderly patients. And what was very interesting is I could never understand why Elizabeth, aged 93 years old, came to see me in my office in the building I showed earlier on. And she would go into heart failure every couple of weeks until I decided I would do a home visit. And when I walked through her kitchen, and the same thing happened with John, who was a good friend of mine, an artist up in Maine. When I went to visit them, I had to go through their kitchen. I realized that they were an elderly person. The easiest way to eat a meal is to have a cup of chicken noodle soup or one of those soups. Until you read the label, they would have 2 cups of soup a day, and each cup of soup would have over 850 milligrams of sodium. And this is why I stress, read your labels. You may be taking in more salt and other unwanted additives to food that would complicate your whole lifestyle. So if you have high blood pressure, if you have heart disease, if you have diabetes, if you have any other chronic ailment, you are what you eat. Read the labels and try and reduce the amount of sodium in your meals, because that is essential. And one can add any other spices or any other herbs to flavor meals. One does not need to salt everything. So one of the last slides I'm going to show before I open up to questions is the reason most diets fail. And I've never yet come across a diet that works long term. The only diet, as far as I'm concerned, that works is eat less. Instead of having a full plate, eat half a plate or 2/3. Eat slowly. And the most important thing about diets is they impose unrealistic restrictions on how you live your life. I don't care what diet you're on, whether it's the Banting, whether it's paleo, whether it's anything else. If they have too many restrictions, we can't keep up with them. So the most important thing is cut down on carbs. Don't eat all the protein in a Banting diet. And in whatever you do, make the right choices in the types of food you eat and the way you eat it. A couple of my friends now are doing the starvation diet. I think it's starvation diet, where they would eat. It's a fasting diet where they'll eat a meal at 10 o'clock in the morning and then a light dinner and nothing from 6 o'clock to 10 o'clock. So they'll have a period of fasting. And they've lost a tremendous amount of weight in it. My one friend has lost something like 17 kilos. The problem is, unless he's going to keep on that, and it's unrealistic, because if you're invited out, you can do this in lockdown. The moment you're invited to a Shabbos dinner or you have something else like that, you're going to go off it. It's unrealistic. So the most important thing is find out what works for you. And when people say, well, I can't do it, my first thing to them is, do you shoplift when you go to a store? If you can have control over certain things, you can have control over other things. You just have to choose what control you have. So as well as as many diets as there are, none of them work in the long term. And with that, I will end this presentation and I'll open up to questions. Questions you can ask about the heart and COVID, you can ask about anything else. Why don't we do this and we can then go further. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Tony. It really was an extraordinary presentation. But I do have to, my first question is to wonder about your qualifications. You only mentioned chicken soup in a negative connotation because it came in a can. Now, surely chicken soup is one of the best things that you can have as part of your diet. But yes, the other thing I did want to mention.
But Philip, let me interrupt. Chicken soup in the can is wrong, but chicken soup like my grandmother made was never wrong.
Now I'm reassured about your qualifications, and now we can proceed. So thank you for that one. But what I also want to raise is about reading labels. Because one of the things I also want to alert people to is if they see something labeled no preservatives, check very carefully, because invariably it's got a very high salt or very high sugar content.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Philip. I agree with you. The most important thing is read labels. You know, in South Africa, this has only been a recent addition to the grocery stores where labels have things in it, everything in it. But in the United States, I mean, you can read labels on everything. Unfortunately, you can become quite paranoid if you read too many labels.
But you also need to have your glasses with you when you go shopping, or magnifying glass, because it's so small. But the other good piece of advice I was once given is the only reason you follow a very healthy diet is that allows you sometimes to indulge.
There is nothing wrong with it. I agree with that's why we have Shabbos. I mean, if you go back to where we all came from, and most of us are Litvaks, I think, on this called South African jury, and having gone to Lithuania, you know, it used to be Mondag bulbus, Dinsdag bulbus, and until you got to Shabbos, Shabbos is Kugel mit bulbus. So they ate very basic foods in the shtetl. They really, but on Shabbos and on important occasions, you can be liberal, but then you know what you're doing. But it's important, as you said, read labels, choose healthy food. Are there any other questions or comments? I welcome anything. You can ask me almost anything. If I can't answer it, I will tell you.
Doctor, may I ask you a question?
Tony, Ruth, Tony.
Thanks, Tony. Many products, even selected products at Woolworths, contain palm oil or palm fruit. Is that not high cholesterol? Again,
Ruth, palm oil is not the most, if you looked at the oils that I said, palm oil is not the most healthy of oils. But don't worry, the cholesterol part of your diet, as I showed. Cholesterol does not, eating a lot of cholesterol does not necessarily connote a bad diet. There are population groups, and I got myself into a lot of problems because one of the things that I learned when I came back, having practiced here and then in the United States for almost 30 years and coming back here, I have never in my career seen as high cholesterol levels as I've seen in the colored and the Afrikaans population and some of the Indians. The reason that it is so high here is because of one of the slides that I didn't put in is my slides on genes. The Dutch, when they came here, brought two very unhealthy genes with them. One of them was porphyria, which is a blood disease related to iron and retention, and the other was homozygous hypercholesterolemia. And if you have a family history and if you have the gene for high cholesterol, it's bad for you. If you have a cholesterol, and I will quote family members of mine who have a cholesterol, let's give you a number of 7.5. Most doctors and most people will tell you you need to be on a statin. The question is, how does that high cholesterol express itself? Number one, look at your family history. If you have no family history of heart disease, if your grandmother lived into her 80s and your grandfather and your parents are over 75 or 80 and not had a heart attack, your likelihood of having, even with a high cholesterol, of having heart disease is very, very small. The way we look at it now is doing an ultrasound of the artery that goes up to your brain, the carotid artery. If the carotid artery does not have cholesterol plaque, the likelihood of the coronary arteries having cholesterol plaque is very low because it's the same plumbing system. So I advise people who have a negative family history but a high cholesterol to get their doctor to do a carotid Doppler study and look at the carotid artery. The carotid arteries are clear. In my opinion, there's no indication to take a statin because every medication has a side effect. And I'm going to divert for a moment. We have a major problem here with COVID. And we have a number of people here who are anti-vaxxers, who don't want to have a vaccine. And I'll quote Professor Barry Jacobson of Wits University, a hematologist, who says, the only clots to worry about with the vaccine are the clots who don't have the vaccine. And I really believe it. And the other thing I'd like to stress is the vaccine is like a seatbelt. If you don't wear a seatbelt and you're in a car accident, your injuries and your chance of death is higher. It's the same with the vaccine. The vaccine is not going to necessarily 100% prevent you from getting COVID. But what we've seen of recent is if you are vaccinated, the risk of getting serious disease, of hospitalization, of landing up in an ICU and dying a terrible death isolated from everybody else is very, very, very low. It's less than 0.8% in the recent studies that have come out in Israel and in the United States, even with the Delta variant. So I would advocate, if you haven't been vaccinated, please get vaccinated. It is essential for yours and our community's health, that masking and washing hands and decreasing crowds. We've brought on this third wave all by ourselves by all going to Shabbos meals and congregating at the beach, and we haven't listened to what is prevention. So I'm going to leave it at that. Hilda.
Thank you, Tony.
Yeah, I've got a question. In fact, I was going to write down a list of questions in case I forget. So the first one I want to ask you is, I often buy these big bottles of Sears fresh fruit juice. And you get mango and you get all sorts of them. They're absolutely delicious. I don't know whether they are piled with sugar, but they're supposed to be 100% natural fruit juice. I do as well eat oranges, bananas, and so you get the fiber. So is that okay to eat that, to drink that?
The problem with these juices is, unfortunately, they have a lot of what is natural can be natural sugars. So it's the amount that you take of whatever it is. So one to two servings, a couple of times a week is fine. But
That's what I have.
yeah, but that's a problem with supersizing. We get enticed because it's a big thing to buy it and to consume it. But again, you've got to look at your own profile. Are you diabetic? Do you have a propensity to metabolic syndrome? Those are the things. Be conscious. And if I look at the people on this, what I very like about this group of people and the people that I see here, we're all educated in some way or other. We all are people who can make the correct choices. So whether you get naturals, fruits, etc., it's portion size. Yes, Ruth.
I've got another. Oh, sorry. When Ruth's finished, can I ask you something else?
Yes.
So Ruth's going first.
You can ask the next question, Hilda. You're wrong.
Okay. I just want to ask you. I take in the winter. I take something called Viral Guard, which does have the basic vitamins in it, as well as various. I don't know. It's got various other echinacea and all that sort of thing. But it's also got zinc. Doesn't one have to take these multivitamins because of the zinc and the iron and all that sort of thing?
Only
where does one get that from?
You get it in the general food, depending on what you eat. Iron, iron is important if one is shown to be anemic. Number two, if one is a woman who is in the menstrual cycle and they are become anemic or low iron. Iron has also been shown as an important thing for people in heart failure. If any of you have heart failure, ask your doctor to check your iron level, because we've shown, recent studies have shown that by supplementing iron for people in heart failure, it has a positive effect on keeping them out of hospital and out of heart failure. So I would say, depending, if you're eating a diet as I've suggested, and looking at the foods that you're getting in, whether it's in nuts, you get selenium, you get zinc, you don't need to supplement. I really believe that the vitamin industry pushes it because that's von dort macht dem a Leben. That's how they make money.
Yes, yes. One more question, if I may.
Yes.
I've been on Altosec. Now, it tells you, the instructions say don't take it for more than 10 days. But the surgeon, when I had the gastroscopy about 5 years ago, said you've got to take it every single day. So I take one a day, Altosec, and it's like I think I've got a hernia. I don't know what. Anyway, so I can. Apparently, my doctor, my house doctor, told me that I should have a vitamin B12 injection every 3 months, because Altosec taken on a regular basis chews away your vitamin B12. But I have done it.
Hilda, they can measure your vitamin B12 level, and if your vitamin B12 level is down, then you need the injection. If your vitamin B12 level is normal, you don't need it. There's a question I have here about ivermectin from Iona. Ivermectin was initially for pets. It's a anti-parasitic agent. There is no clinical data, scientific data or trial to say that ivermectin does anything for COVID. We do not, a lot of people are pushing it, and a lot of people are giving ivermectin, which has got pills that have got nothing in them, but people are easily persuaded to do that until there is good scientific data to show that ivermectin has a role in the treatment. It's the same as Donald Trump with his hydroxychloroquine and his bleach and everything else like that. That's one thing. I would say there is nothing to do it, because ivermectin, if you read its side effects, you can get liver failure, you get other things with it. So you've got to weigh up what is the thing. The thing that works for COVID is masking, sanitizing, washing hands, social distancing, and eating a healthy diet. Those are the most important things. And I really believe that I cannot understand what's happening in the United States, and I'm in full trepidation. I have 3 children and 3 grandchildren who live there, that they're going to see a resurgence because nobody's wearing masks, nobody's doing anything else. The Asians are not that stupid. If you see pictures of Japan and Asian countries and Korea, low incidences initially of COVID, low incidence of flu, because they wear masks. If you've traveled on an aeroplane and you've been on a long distance flight, many times you come up and you get a flu-like illness or something afterwards. We've got to be protective. There's from Hermione Sternberg, a recipe book from the early 90s. You got cholesterol poisoning from reading the recipes. But Hermione, the interesting thing is from the early 90s, people were not eating the portion sizes that we eat now. That's the major difference. And they were walking more. If you go, the major difference between a lot of the European countries and the United States of America is people actually walk to the store. And the other thing people do is they shop on a regular basis. They don't do a 1 monthly shop and stock the whole of their pantry cupboard. I mean, when I came back to South Africa and my father, I went to his house, and in his refrigerator, he had 12 bottles of this. And I said, Dad, the cows aren't going to go dry. We stock up as if we're in wartime, but that's something we have to get by. If you can get to a store, or if you can order in now at the end of the pandemic, there's no reason to stock up on things. Is there another question? Hilda, you wanted to ask another one?
No, I've got a comment now that you talked about ivermectin. There's somebody who sends me regularly, and I've asked her dozens of times to send me all these conspiracy things that come from America about COVID. And one doctor was saying, you must take ivermectin. It's the most wonderful thing. And Dufka, I had just read somewhere that was Dufka when the Indians went into this massive Delta, the new virus. And they were dying, and they were running to go and get their vaccinations. And he was saying, oh, the Indians use ivermectin and they never get sick. It's such a cheap thing, and you could buy it in the grocery stores. So it was such a contradiction, because in fact they were running to get vaccines. But incidentally, I saw yesterday on Israeli news that Israel now has downgraded the Pfizer. It used to be like 86% safe against the vaccine. They say now it's come down to 64% safe.
Yeah, but Hilda, the problem is...
I'm taking the vaccine. I've had my...
Please, everybody take the vaccine. Ruth, you have another question? Let Ruth ask her question.
It wasn't Ruth. Thank you. You answered my question.
Oh, okay. Anybody else have a question?
Any more questions for Tony? Okay.
If there aren't any, please remember that in every society, there are people who claim that snake oil works and that ivermectin, that other things work, until you see reputable scientific data. Don't take it, because read what the side effects and complications are of the thing that you're taking, because you may be taking one thing and inheriting something else. So be very careful. So with that, if there are no more questions, Diana.
I just want to ask you, your magazine that you showed us during your talk, where can people get hold of it?
If you go onto the HEFSA website, www.hefsa.com.
FFSA.com.
Yes. Yes, and you'll find it there. Just look up Heart Failure Society of South Africa, and they will be coming out. There are a number. There is a patient site that you can go to, instructions for patients with heart disease and heart failure. But our nutritional guideline is coming out quarterly, and I think this is very, very important. It's being circulated to doctors' offices, but it's there for people to do. And Sandra's put up a number of very nice recipes. I mean, the Banting cookbook that Tim Noakes put out has some wonderful recipes in them. You just don't have to go overboard with the amount of meat and fat that's in them. But there are a lot of wonderful recipes in them that are good. And you can adapt any recipe to be heart healthy if you use common sense.
May I ask one more question?
Yes, Hilda.
Right. So somebody once told me that fat-free milk, it goes, when all the fat is removed, the milk actually gets a bluish color, and that they put chalk in to make it look white. Have you heard of anything like that?
I haven't heard of it, but I would never drink fat-free milk because it's like drinking watered-down milk. If I'm going to drink milk, which I would only do when I have my cappuccino, I want something that really froths well and that has it, and it doesn't do it unless you have the fat in it. And again,
right. And the same with yogurt. The same with yogurt.
Totally, there's nothing wrong with fat, full fat yogurt.
Right, exactly.
Diana, anything
Okay,
else?
so yeah, I just first of all want to thank you for your excellent talk. It was to the point, people understood everything, and I think that you got across the most important things that people need to know now. So thank you so much, and I'm so glad that I phoned you earlier this week to chat about it. You didn't tell us about your cooking, which Nancy told me that you are the next master chef. So maybe we'll get you back to talk about that one day. And I also heard you talk a little bit of Yiddish during your presentation, and to let you know that we have fabulous Yiddish classes every single Friday morning. So if you'd like to join us, please join us at 10 o'clock on a Friday morning. We'd love to have you.
I'd love to do that. I studied some Yiddish in the United States for a couple of years, but you know, like everything else, unless you talk it, you lose it.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I'll send you the link for tomorrow, and then I'll actually put you on our database so you'll get it every week. If you'd like to join us, please do. Then the program for next week is going out this afternoon, everybody. The concert this afternoon is Diana Krall, who is absolutely brilliant. And if I remember correctly, I've chosen one of her doing a concert in Paris. So it's really special. For those of you who are knitting, Lena, I hope your beanie's nearly finished. Don't forget, one-to-one, we're collecting beanies and scarves for people, our handicapped friends who normally can't come to the one-to-one, but because of COVID can't do so. And then I see Estelle's on this morning, as well as we've heard Hilda. And don't forget, last week at our concert, you both won challahs, and they will be delivered to you tomorrow for Shabbat.
Oh, please don't worry. Diana, please don't worry about it. How are you going to schlep it to where I live?
So Emmanuel does the deliveries, and he will deliver it to you tomorrow. So you won it, and you will get it tomorrow.
Oh, but then he needs to let me know what time, because I may not even be here.
Was there someone
doing one of my 20-30-minute walks?
Estelle, Hilda, I'll speak to you offline. Don't worry about it.
Okay. Then.
Okay. So everybody, if there's nothing else that anyone has to say or to add to this morning, just thank you so much to Tony, and stay warm, stay safe. And if you haven't been vaccinated, listen to Tony and do so, please.
Thank you,
everybody.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Grace Dank.
Grace and Dank.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much.